It started the same way most stupid neighbor wars do, with something so small, you almost laugh about it at first, except you can't laugh when someone keeps stealing your mail. The first time it happened, I thought maybe the wind caught it or the postman dropped it. No big deal, right? But then it happened again, and this time there were footprints, small floral ones, leading from my mailbox across the grass toward Karen's house. The kind of expensive, ridiculous slippers she wore when she strutted around the cul-de-sac pretending to inspect everyone's yards for HOA compliance. That's the thing about people like Karen. They thrive on control, on the illusion that their clipboard and laminated bylaws give them power over everyone else. She wasn't elected. She wasn't even on the official board. She just declared herself the neighborhood enforcer, the self-appointed sheriff of suburban order, and somehow, everyone played along because it was easier than fighting her. But me? I wasn't wired that way. I kept quiet, sure, but I noticed everything. The way she peeked through blinds when anyone parked too close to her curb, how she'd walk her dog at dawn just to check for violations, and how she always managed to stop by my mailbox whenever she passed my yard. At first, I ignored it, because reacting is what she wanted. Karen feeds on reaction the way fire feeds on oxygen. But every missing letter felt like an itch under my skin, a little more personal each time, until it stopped being annoying and started feeling like invasion. So I started watching her patterns. She came out at exactly 7:15 every morning, watering her fake lavender plants, waving like a politician to anyone foolish enough to make eye contact, and then, just before turning back, she'd glance at my mailbox like it was her morning ritual. That's when I decided to get proof. I set up a small camera inside a fake birdhouse across the street, angled perfectly to catch her in the act. I told myself it wasn't revenge, not yet, anyway, it was documentation. But when I finally watched the footage, my stomach twisted, because I was right. Karen, robe tied, coffee mug in hand, casually opened my mailbox, looked inside, and walked off with my package tucked under her arm like she owned it. I live in a quiet, gated community where HOA rules are treated like gospel, and Karen was its high priestess. She once fined a guy for painting his mailbox post the wrong shade of brown and bragged about it at the block party. That woman lived for control, and maybe that's why stealing my mail gave her such twisted satisfaction, because to her, it wasn't theft. It was enforcement. I still tried to be civil. I waved at her, even complimented her garden gnomes, and once, I offered her a jar of my homemade honey. She looked at it suspiciously and said, "We don't usually eat unregulated produce." That line told me everything I needed to know about her. Her world revolved around control and fear of anything free, anything natural, anything she couldn't label or fine. That's when I realized why she targeted me. I represented independence. I built my own porch swing, never showed up to HOA meetings, never asked for permission. That drove her crazy. She couldn't regulate me, so she tried to punish me. Then one morning, a package I'd been waiting on, a rare woodworking chisel from Vermont, vanished. The footage showed her again, same robe, same smug little grin, tucking it under her arm like it was casserole for the bake sale. I took it to the post office, showed them everything, but the clerk just sighed and said they'd look into it. The cops wouldn't care unless it was thousands of dollars, and honestly, they'd probably laugh. So I did what any sane, patient man would do. I decided to teach her a lesson she'd never forget. Not with anger, not with shouting, but with precision. My brother works in stage props for local theater, and he once brought over this fake snake, so real my dog refused to go outside for 2 days. It had painted scales, a glossy body, even that faint curve in the jaw that made it look ready to strike. Perfect. I borrowed it and spent the next day preparing my little masterpiece. Coiled the snake neatly inside my mailbox, positioned its head just under the lid, so when someone opened it, the mouth would spring forward like it was mid-lunge. For flair, I placed a decoy envelope sticking out, stamped HOA response. I knew she wouldn't be able to resist. The next morning, I waited behind my curtain, camera rolling. Right on schedule, 7:16, she shuffled out in her pastel pink robe, mug in hand, scanning the street like a hawk. She looked both ways, always dramatic, and then she reached for my mailbox. The scream that followed could have shattered glass. Her coffee went airborne, her robe flared open like a parachute, and she stumbled backward straight into her hydrangeas. The fake snake bounced once, and she screamed again, kicking at it, which only made it worse. It was beautiful, cinematic, the kind of moment you frame in your memory forever. I laughed so hard I had to mute the footage when I rewatched it later. But I didn't post it, didn't show anyone. I didn't want to humiliate her publicly. I just wanted her to stop. Apparently, she didn't see it that way. That afternoon, she marched up my porch, hair still frizzed, wearing a blazer like she was attending a disciplinary hearing. "Do you realize how dangerous that was?" she snapped. "You could have caused me serious harm." I looked her dead in the eye and said, "Only if you were breaking federal law by opening someone else's mail." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. I was checking for HOA violations. "Mailboxes are regulated property. Pretty sure the USPS disagrees," I said calmly, then handed her a flash drive with the footage. "You might want to keep this before someone else does." She froze, glared, muttered something about reviewing the footage for context, and stomped away. For 2 days, peace. Then my mailbox got smashed, door hanging off, snake gone. The next HOA newsletter came out the day after, with a little line tucked at the bottom. "Residents are reminded to report any wildlife issues to HOA safety." Wildlife issues. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. That's when I decided if she wanted a war of control, I'd fight it on her battlefield: paperwork, paranoia, and psychological warfare. So I started small, subtle moves, like planting seeds of doubt in her own little kingdom of order. Every morning, I'd walk out to the mailbox with a serious face, holding an envelope labeled Confidential HOA Legal Review. I'd open it, nod thoughtfully, glance toward her window, then pretend to make a phone call, whispering like I was reporting something urgent. I wasn't saying anything, of course, but she couldn't resist trying to read lips. Curiosity was her Achilles heel. Next, I printed a few official-looking flyers and pinned them on the community board. Article 6, Section 9. Tampering with private property results in immediate expulsion. I signed it concerned member. Within hours, I heard her yelling at her husband, Tom, about illegitimate governance. It was working. The control freak was losing control. But if there's one thing I learned, it's that Karen doesn't go down easy. When cornered, she doesn't apologize, she doubles down. 2 mornings later, I found a letter taped to my front door, typed, printed, and signed by something called the HOA Enforcement Committee. That committee didn't even exist. The letter accused me of staging a hazardous wildlife trap within common property boundaries. I almost laughed, but the tone was so official it was almost impressive. She'd weaponized bureaucracy again. So I wrote back, cold, polite, surgical. "Dear HOA representative, thank you for your concern regarding mailbox wildlife. I appreciate the reminder that tampering with mailboxes is a federal offense. Should the United States Postal Inspection Service require additional footage, I will gladly provide it." I printed 2 copies, one for her mailbox, one for the community board. I didn't even need to sign it. She knew exactly who it was from. After that, things went quiet for a bit, but quiet in HOA land never means peace. It means plotting. A few days later, a white SUV with a hand-drawn HOA logo rolled into the cul-de-sac. Out stepped a man in khaki with a clipboard. Karen trailed behind him like a proud prosecutor escorting a witness. "Good morning," he said. "I'm Mark from Community Standards Oversight." That title didn't exist either. He started reading a list of imaginary violations: improper lawn edging, non-regulation mailbox decor, potential safety hazards. Karen stood beside him nodding like she was on a TV courtroom show. When he finally paused, I smiled and said, "Mark, mind showing me your credentials?" He blinked, fumbled in his pocket, and pulled out what looked like a laminated library card with the word HOA written across the bottom in Sharpie. I couldn't hold back the laugh. "You've got to be kidding me," I said. Karen's face went red. "This is official HOA business. Then you won't mind if I call the police to verify?" Mark's confidence crumbled instantly. "I'm a volunteer," he stammered, and hustled back to the SUV. Karen stayed just long enough to hiss, "This isn't over." "Oh, but it was, for now." Word spread fast. By noon, half the block was laughing about Sheriff Karen and Deputy Clipboard. Still, embarrassment wasn't enough to stop her. When people like her lose control, they reach for their next weapon: reputation. The next morning, the HOA newsletter featured a new notice. Residents are reminded to avoid unapproved wildlife pranks and ensure community safety. It was obviously about me, even if it didn't name names. She was painting me as the villain now, a menace to suburban tranquility. So I flipped the narrative. I printed my own flyers, this time about a neighborhood mailbox safety initiative, thanking residents for vigilance against recent mail thefts and offering to install small cameras to improve security. I dropped them in every mailbox. I didn't mention Karen's name. I didn't have to. By sunset, the neighborhood buzzed with speculation. People whispered about missing letters and started side-eyeing Karen. Her precious reputation, the only thing shinier than her fake lavender plants, was cracking. That evening, she stormed across my lawn, gripping one of my flyers like it was evidence in a murder trial. "You're spreading lies about me." "I didn't mention you, Karen," I said evenly. "But if you're feeling guilty, that's between you and your conscience." Her voice trembled. "You think you're clever, but you have no idea who you're dealing with." "Oh, I think I do," I said. "You're the kind of person who thinks stealing mail is a civic duty." Her eyes went narrow. "You're going to regret this." Then she turned and nearly tripped on her own curb. I didn't regret it. I relished it. Until that night, around midnight, when my motion light clicked on. I peeked through the blinds and saw a crouched figure by my mailbox. I zoomed in, floral pajamas, unmistakable. Karen. She bolted when the light hit her, but not before she smeared something inside the box. In the morning, I found the sticky mess, honey. My own honey, the same jar I'd gifted her weeks ago. I laughed, a long, stupid, disbelieving laugh. Petty, creative, ridiculous, but also impressive. So I cleaned the mailbox, waxed it, and went back to work, upgrading my little defense system. This time, I installed a small Bluetooth speaker wired to play a rattlesnake hiss every time the lid opened. Quick, loud, terrifying. At 7:15 sharp, she approached again, robe swaying, mug in hand, moving like a bomb tech about to cut the red wire. She hesitated, glanced around, and slowly lifted the lid. The hiss ripped through the air. She screamed, flung her coffee, and jumped back so fast she tripped over her sandals. Then she spun toward my house, shaking with fury. "You think this is funny? I'm calling the HOA right now." I stepped out onto the porch, calm, almost smiling. "Karen, I've told you before, stop touching my mailbox. You can't prove anything." "Actually, I can," I said, pointing to the birdhouse camera. "You're being recorded every time." Her face froze. "You can't record me. That's illegal. Not when you're committing a crime on my property." She was trembling with rage, eyes glassy. "I'm going to have your cameras removed." "Good luck," I said. "They're registered under federal property protection." They weren't, but it sounded official enough to make her twitch. She stormed off muttering about legal orders and bylaws. And I knew. She wasn't done. 2 days later, another letter appeared in my mailbox, this one from the HOA legal department, accusing me of installing unapproved surveillance devices. There was even a fine, $500. But she'd misspelled association. I framed it, hung it above my workbench like a trophy. That night, though, I noticed my camera's SD card had been wiped clean. Every clip from the past 2 days, gone. The last thing it had recorded was a short, shadowy figure in a robe, fiddling with the birdhouse. Karen had crossed the line from harassment to sabotage. I took the fake letter to Robert, the actual HOA president, a quiet older man who spent most of his days golfing. He sighed the moment I said her name. "She's been filing complaints against half the neighborhood," he said. "But she's technically not breaking any HOA rules by existing." I slid him the letter. He blinked, frowned. "That's not from us." He rubbed his temples. "I'll talk to her." He didn't want to, but he had to. That afternoon, I saw him at her door. The conversation was heated. Her hands flailed. His stayed calm. When he left, she stood there alone on her porch, staring at my house. Not embarrassed, not defeated, just calculating. And that was the moment I realized I wasn't fighting a petty neighbor anymore. I was fighting someone who'd turned suburban order into a personal crusade. 2 mornings passed with no sign of her, no newsletters, no passive-aggressive memos, just silence. And silence, when it came to Karen, was never peace, it was planning. The cul-de-sac felt like the air before a storm, that eerie stillness that makes the hair on your arms rise. On the 3rd morning, I noticed my mailbox flag was up even though I hadn't mailed anything. Inside was a plain white envelope, my name printed in block letters, no return address. I didn't even need to guess. The handwriting, That sharp, deliberate Karen calligraphy said it all. The note read, "Enjoy your privacy while you can." It wasn't a threat, not exactly, but it felt like one. That afternoon, a new laminated notice appeared on the HOA board, Community Safety Update. It warned against unauthorized surveillance and mechanical deterrence causing auditory disturbances. It didn't mention me, but it didn't have to. Karen was declaring war through signage now. That night, while I was sanding cabinet doors in the garage, I heard a heavy metallic crash outside. I ran out and saw my mailbox lying face down on the curb, post snapped clean in half. A baseball bat leaned nearby, its handle smeared with bright pink nail polish. Karen's color. I just stood there, staring, half amused, half boiling inside. I didn't call the cops. I wanted her to keep digging her own hole. The next morning, I replaced the mailbox with a reinforced steel one, bolted into concrete. Then I added a little surprise, a motion-triggered sprinkler hidden under the mulch, connected to a pressure sensor. Wouldn't hurt her, just soak her. At 7:15 sharp, the setup paid off. The camera feed showed her crouching beside the new box, hoodie up, trying to look stealthy. The sensor tripped, and the sprinkler blasted her square in the face. She screamed, stumbled, and fell into the gutter. When she looked up, dripping and furious, I was standing at the window with my coffee. I waved. She stormed back home, soaked and shaking, and for a moment I thought maybe that would finally be the end. But humiliation never ends a war for people like her. It just shifts the tactics. By that afternoon, another notice was pinned to my door. Deliberate water hazards violate Section 8B of Neighborhood Safety Rules. Fake, of course. So I made my own letter, stamped in red. Postal Property Integrity Task Force, Federal Notice Against Mailbox Tampering. I posted it right above hers on the HOA board. The paperwork war was officially public. Neighbors started watching the spectacle like a reality show. Kids whispered about Snake Guy. Even her husband, Tom, couldn't meet my eyes anymore. One evening while he was taking out the trash, he stopped and said quietly, "Look, I know this has gotten out of hand. She's just stressed." I asked, "Since when?" He sighed. "Since the HOA vote thing." That stuck in my head. Later that night, I checked the HOA records online and found it. Karen had tried to get herself elected as official HOA president, but the board rejected her for procedural irregularities. Translation, she tried to rig it, and the timing matched perfectly with when she'd started targeting me again. This wasn't about mail anymore. It was about power. So I went to Robert, the real president, and laid everything out. Photos of the smashed mailbox, the fake letters, the honey, the sprinkler footage. He looked tired but interested. "If we find her, she'll appeal and drag us into months of meetings," he said. "Then let's not find her," I replied. "Let's expose her." We planned a special HOA meeting, open to every resident. Topic: mailbox safety and recent disturbances. Of course, Karen showed up first, clipboard in hand, smiling like she was the guest of honor. She sat front row. Robert began calmly. "We've had a series of incidents concerning mail theft and vandalism. We'd like to present the facts." He clicked the remote, and the screen lit up. First came the snake prank footage, Karen's scream echoing through the speakers. Then the honey incident, then the sprinkler ambush, then the mailbox destruction. Each clip drew gasps, laughter, disbelief. When the lights came back on, Karen's face was white as paper. "That footage is edited," she stammered. "He's harassing me." Robert cut her off. "Karen, you filed a false notice under the HOA's name. That's identity fraud. And you vandalized private property. Do you have anything to say?" She didn't. She gathered her bag, muttered something about lawyers, and stormed out. The silence that followed was thick and satisfying. For a few weeks, peace returned. Mail arrived on time. The HOA board went quiet. Then one morning, a small box appeared on my porch. No label, just my name. Inside was the same fake snake I'd used, coiled neatly, with a note tied around its neck. Round 2. That night, my camera caught her silhouette standing at the edge of the street, just watching. No yelling, no movement, just silent, steady watching. It sent a chill through me. Then came the white van. Parked across my driveway all day, no logo, windows tinted. When I walked outside, the driver's window rolled up slowly. By sunset, it was still there. She'd escalated again, psychological warfare. I strengthened my defenses, widened my camera angles, added another light. and rebuilt the trap one last time. The snake, the hiss, the sprinkler, and a new addition. My recorded voice sang, "Smile for the camera." Near midnight, the motion alert buzzed. On the feed, a tall shadow approached the mailbox, prying it open with pliers. The lid lifted, the hiss sounded, the sprinklers exploded, my voice boomed, and the intruder screamed, running straight into the floodlight. For a split second, the camera caught his face. "Tom, I didn't call the police." I printed the still frame, slipped it into Karen's mailbox, and went to bed. The next morning, she opened it, froze, looked straight at my house, then walked inside without a word. Hours later, Tom knocked on my door. He looked wrecked. "She made me do it," he said quietly. "She said you were spying on us." His voice cracked. "You don't know what she's like when she's angry." "Actually," I said, "I think I do." He left, shoulders slumped, and for a while, it really did seem like the storm had passed. Until the news van showed up. 2 reporters stepped out, microphone and camera ready. "Sir, are you the homeowner involved in the HOA dispute?" one asked. I blinked. "What?" They said they'd been contacted by a local HOA official claiming harassment and booby-trapped property. She'd gone to the media. That night, the local station aired, "HOA volunteer claims harassment after mailbox prank." The footage was one-sided. Photos of Karen crying, interviews about living in fear. My name wasn't mentioned, but everyone in the neighborhood knew. My phone blew up, but I had one more card to play. My cameras had caught her feeding lines to the reporters, even rehearsing her tearful scene. I clipped the footage and uploaded it anonymously in the video's comments. The internet did what it does best, ripped the story apart. The top comment read, "Wait, she staged this." Another said, "Classic HOA Karen." By morning, the news video was deleted. The next day, a for sale sign leaned against her porch. I thought it was over. A week later, though, I found another envelope in my mailbox. Inside, a single line, "You win this one. But some of us don't quit. We relocate." I laughed, but something in me knew the story wasn't finished. A few days after she moved out, I got a package with a key inside and a note. "Come see for yourself." Against my better judgment, I did. Her house was half empty, smelling of bleach and perfume. She stood in the kitchen, tired but calm. "You came," she said softly. "I wasn't sure you would." "What is this, Karen?" She pointed to a box on the counter. "Evidence. Of everything. The fake letters, the forged signatures, even the news script. I recorded it all." I hesitated. "Why give this to me?" "Because I'm tired," she said. "And because you were right. I lost control. It stopped being about mail. It was about me." She looked down at her hands. "It's easier to be the villain than the failure." Inside the box was a flash drive labeled HO Secrets. When I opened it later that night, I found spreadsheets showing thousands of HOA dollars funneled into fake maintenance accounts, all signed by Robert. The real monster had been sitting behind the golf clubs all along. I exposed him at the next board meeting. He resigned the next morning. The HOA, for the first time in years, had no tyrant left to fear. And then, almost ironically, they elected me president. I didn't want it, but maybe the only way to fix a broken system is from the inside. So I rewrote the bylaws. Simplified everything to one rule. Use common sense and respect privacy. People clapped. For the first time, the neighborhood smiled again. Then, weeks later, a young couple moved into Karen's old house. Their moving van read, "Managed by Karen Properties, LLC." I should have known. New surveys appeared, new forms asking for clearer structure, anonymous emails about restoring decorum. Karen was still pulling strings, just from somewhere else. One night, she called me. Her voice was calm, almost kind. "You're doing better than I expected," she said. "Almost sounds like approval," I replied. "It's not. You'll see soon enough. They love you now, but wait until you make a decision they don't like. You'll become what you hated." Then the line went dead. Weeks later, it happened. Complaints, new subcommittees, whispers of more rules. I gave in once, just once, wrote a small regulation about RV parking, and then another about fence colors. It spread like rot. One night, I caught myself editing a clause about mailbox sizes, and I froze. Because I realized she was right. Karen hadn't won through rules or revenge. She'd won through influence. She didn't need to live here to haunt the place. She'd built a system that would keep birthing new Karens forever. The next morning, I resigned. left a note under the new treasurer's door. A community should be built on trust, not enforcement. When I walked out, there was a note on my mailbox. 2 words, looping handwriting. Told you so. K. I laughed. A tired, almost grateful laugh. Then I picked up the little ceramic snake she'd once sent me and set it inside the mailbox, right where it all began. For the first time, it wasn't a weapon. It was closure. As I drove away, the line of identical mailboxes faded in the mirror. Neat, perfect, soulless. And I couldn't help but think, in neighborhoods like ours, there's always another Karen, waiting. Sometimes across the street, sometimes in the mirror. So what do you think? Was she the villain, or just the product of a system that turns everyone into one? Drop your thoughts below, and tell me, what would you have done if your HOA Karen stole your mail?